Right now, there is a phone in your pocket, or I mean, maybe it's sitting right next to you on a desk, that is quietly tracking your habits, your location, and your preferences.
Oh, absolutely. Every single move.
Right. It knows when you wake up, it knows exactly where you buy your coffee, and it probably has a highly accurate statistical guess about what you're going to do this coming weekend.
It's a little terrifying when you actually think about it.
It really is. But I want to say right up front, this deep dive isn't meant to make you paranoid or, urge you to throw all your devices into a river.
Right, please don't do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that today. It's really about discovering how to maintain your authenticity and basically find the cracks in the concrete of our modern surveilled world. So today we're unpacking a really fascinating text called the Panopticon Poetics by Max and Claude.
Yeah, and it is a incredibly dense, intense piece of writing. It essentially functions as a survival guide for the digital age.
Yeah, and what's wild is how they do it. We're going to be looking at how the authors blend the really academic philosophy of Michel Foucault with the lived experience and lyrical rhythm of Tupac Shakur.
It's a combination you wouldn't expect, but it works so well.
It really does. But before we jump in, a quick disclaimer for you listening. Because this text tackles some pretty heavily politicized topics like systemic racism, gentrification, police violence, we just want to be completely clear up front.
Right, absolutely.
Our goal today isn't to take a political stance on any of these issues. We are simply, mapping out the social analyses and the survival strategies exactly as the authors present them. We're not taking sides.
Yeah, we're basically just taking their framework, setting it on the table, and looking at how it operates.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do they even start with a concept this massive?
So the authors start by dropping us into a very specific, really mundane reality to sort of anchor their whole philosophy. We are introduced to this protagonist named Marcus. And Marcus is just standing in a corner bodega in Oakland. He's holding a bottle of water he just bought. And up in the corner of the ceiling, there's a security camera blinking a steady red light, just watching him.
Right, a scene we've all been in a million times.
Exactly. But the crucial detail the text points out is that the human shopkeeper behind the counter, he isn't looking at the security monitors. He stopped watching those screens years ago.
Oh, wow. So no human eyes are actually on that camera.
Right. Those cameras aren't there for human eyes anymore.
Those lenses are feeding directly into, like, a vast server farm somewhere in Virginia or Nevada or wherever.
Yeah.
They're just capturing raw data.
Exactly. And the authors argue this is the ultimate realization of what the 18th century philosopher Jeremy Bentham called the Panopticon.
Okay, the Panopticon. Give us a quick refresher on that.
Right. So Bentham originally designed the Panopticon as an architectural concept for a prison. Picture this circular building with a guard tower in the dead center. And all the prisoner cells are positioned around the outer ring, backlit, so the guards can see inside at all times. But the prisoners, and this is key, they can't see into the tower.
Ah, so they never know if they're actually being watched at any given second.
Exactly. And because they never know exactly when they're being watched, they have to assume they are always being watched. So they begin to police their own behavior.
Wow. And the text is saying our digital infrastructure is doing that exact same thing.
Yeah, it's the final, perfected form of Bentham's vision. But it's far more pervasive, because we willingly purchase and carry the instruments for our own observation in our pockets every single day.
And the watchers in this modern central tower aren't even human guards anymore. I mean, the text notes that the moment Marcus steps outside that bodega, his phone pings with an advertisement for a specific brand of sneakers.
Right. Sneakers he had just quickly scrolled past at 2 in the morning, like 3 days prior.
The watcher is just an algorithm.
Yeah. And the authors use the political philosopher Hannah Arendt to explain the exact nature of this algorithmic watcher. They take her famous concept of the banality of evil and apply it directly to modern technology.
Okay, banality of evil. That's a heavy concept.
It is. Arendt coined that phrase in the 1960s after covering the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was one of the major architects of the Holocaust.
Right.
And when she watched him in the courtroom, she realized she wasn't looking at some theatrical, mustache-twirling monster. She was looking at a profoundly unremarkable bureaucrat.
Just a guy stamping papers, essentially.
Yeah. Eichmann thought entirely in administrative categories. He treated human lives as mere logistical problems to be solved with maximum efficiency, totally devoid of any internal conscience, empathy, or doubt.
That is chilling.
It really is. And the text argues that the modern algorithm is basically the perfected bureaucrat. It makes life-altering decisions, like denying a mortgage application or flagging a resume for rejection.
Or determining a neighborhood's risk profile.
Right, and it does it with relentless consistency and absolutely zero human understanding.
The text says it categorizes, but it does not comprehend.
Yeah.
Which honestly makes me think of an incredibly overconfident, blindfolded bouncer at a nightclub.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, it's like this bouncer is just checking off metadata on a clipboard, right? Noting your zip code, your browser history, your shoe size, the exact geographic coordinates of where you sleep.
Yeah.
But because he's blindfolded, he completely misses the actual breathing human being standing right in front of him.
That is a perfect analogy. The system is infinitely observant, yet profoundly stupid. Like, it knows that Marcus's credit score recently dropped 40 points, but it has no capacity to understand the context.
It doesn't know about a sudden medical emergency or a family crisis.
Exactly. It cannot comprehend his actual financial character or his reliability. It just executes the procedure based on the categorical data it scraped.
Right. So if the system is this blind, mindless categorizer that we interact with constantly, how do we navigate it without being entirely crushed by its weight?
Well, that's where the authors introduce two completely different guides for this survival process. As we mentioned earlier, Michel Foucault and Tupac Shakur.
We'll talk about Foucault first.
So Foucault provides the structural, theoretical analysis of the problem. In his academic work, particularly Discipline and Punish, Foucault explains that power in the modern era doesn't just crush us through physical force, it manages us.
It channels us into specific behaviors.
Right. Training our bodies and minds to comply with societal norms until we internalize those rules ourselves. The text uses Foucault to map the architecture of the modern surveillance state.
But the authors highlight a massive vulnerability in Foucault's approach, right?
Where?
Relying solely on dense academic analysis can become its own kind of intellectual prison.
Absolutely. You might learn the precise, multisyllabic vocabulary of how you are being observed and disciplined, but that theoretical knowledge alone can leave you feeling totally paralyzed by the sheer scale of the system.
Because that structural analysis is incredibly heavy. It just lays out an unbeatable machine. But then, and this is my favorite part, the text brings in Tupac Shakur.
Yes.
And Tupac is offering the exact same systemic analysis of power. Like, when he rapped, "They got money for wars but can't feed the poor," he was delivering a razor-sharp critique of state priorities and structural violence.
He absolutely was.
He just didn't write it as a 400-page French philosophical treatise.
Yeah.
He delivered it with rhythm.
And rhythm changes the entire nature of the information. The text argues that rhythm itself functions as a form of resistance because it moves too fast and operates too viscerally for institutional capture.
Wow.
Foucault observed power from a detached intellectual distance. Tupac lived the reality of that power and translated it into a syncopated beat that a community could instantly recognize and move to.
And the authors used Tupac's famous poem, "The Rose That Grew from Concrete," as a literal tactical strategy.
They do. The concrete represents the hostile, unyielding architecture of the surveillance state. Concrete is designed to pave over nature, to be uniform, to offer no nourishment.
Right. And the rose, crucially, doesn't attempt to destroy the entire slab of concrete, because that would be impossible.
Exactly. Instead, it finds the cracks. It locates the tiny imperfections where the system's gaze doesn't quite reach, where the cement didn't set perfectly, and it chooses to grow exactly there.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, but I have to push back on this premise for a moment.
Okay, go for it.
When I read the sections about Marcus practically applying this, timing police patrols, monitoring the blinking lights on cameras, isn't this incredibly exhausting? If the goal is to exist as a rose in the concrete, are you supposed to live your entire life in a state of hypervigilance? I mean, navigating your own neighborhood shouldn't require the tactical awareness of a spy behind enemy lines. Doesn't that level of constant paranoia destroy your quality of life anyway?
That is a great question, and the authors actually anticipate that exact critique. They draw a very sharp line between paranoia and intention.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, paranoia is reactive, right? It's the feeling of being hunted, which is exactly what the Panopticon wants you to feel. Intention, on the other hand, is proactive.
So Marcus timing the patrols.
Right. When Marcus walks near 14th and Broadway, and notes that police patrols circle that specific block every 7 minutes during the day and every 12 minutes at night. He is not doing this so he can cower in an alleyway.
He's doing it to understand the rhythm of enforcement.
Exactly. He is learning the underlying beat of the system so he can maintain his own agency within it. He chooses when to be seen and when to step into the cracks. It's a practice of preserving the irreducible core of his own human consciousness against a machine that wants to render him completely predictable.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And to maintain that agency, you first have to recognize the deep psychological split that the system forces upon you. The authors lean heavily on the sociologist and historian W.E.B. Du Bois for this.
Yes, back in 1903.
Right. In The Souls of Black Folk, Du Bois wrote about the concept of double consciousness. He described the experience of Black Americans as living behind a veil, constantly having to look at themselves through the eyes of a dominant, hostile society. You have your own self-understanding, but you are forced to simultaneously measure your soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity.
And the authors take Du Bois' foundational concept and adapt it to describe the modern reality of the surveillance state. They call it the double consciousness of data.
The double consciousness of data.
Yeah. Today, we are forced to manage two separate entities, our actual live selves and our data selves. Your data self is the aggregated sum of your credit score, your screen time reports, your algorithmic consumer profile.
Your Uber rating.
Your Uber rating, exactly. Your background check metadata.
And the terrifying part is that your data self often wields significantly more power over your life trajectory than your actual character.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, you might be the most reliable, hardworking tenant in the world, but if your data self is flagged by a leasing algorithm because of the zip code you previously lived in, or like a clerical error on a past utility bill, you are denied the apartment.
Yep.
You cannot negotiate with the algorithm. You can't sit down with it and explain your humanity.
No, because the system presents your data self as an objective scientific truth. It uses the language of mathematics to strip away all the messy context of history, structural inequality, and human reality. It claims that the metadata is the person.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you actually fight back when you cannot opt out of society? I mean, you still need a job, you need housing, you need a bank account.
Well, the text proposes a strategy called the Poetics of Small Refusals, and they take inspiration from Herman Melville's classic short story, Bartleby the Scrivener.
Oh, Bartleby.
Yeah, Bartleby is a clerk who simply stops doing his assigned tasks. And whenever he is asked to comply, he politely but firmly replies with a single catchphrase, "I would prefer not to."
I would prefer not to.
It is the fine art of non-compliance. It's a refusal so subtle and mundane that it doesn't trigger the system's massive disciplinary response. It is not a riot in the streets.
It's just friction.
Exactly. It's Marcus standing at a cash register being asked to provide his phone number and email address just to buy a pair of socks and simply saying, "I prefer not to." It's choosing to pay in cash for certain transactions so there is no digital trail. Or declining to download a restaurant's app to order food and choosing to walk up to the counter instead.
But let's be real here. I have to ask this as a natural skeptic. Does me clicking no to a cookie banner or leaving my smartwatch at home when I go for a hike actually make a dent in a trillion-dollar tech giant's bottom line? It feels a bit like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol.
What's fascinating here is that the authors fully concede this reality. A single individual refusing to hand over their email address will not bankrupt a global data broker. But these actions are not intended to spark an immediate systemic collapse. They function on two different levels. First, they are acts of cumulative economic resistance. Surveillance capitalism relies entirely on the frictionless extraction of your data to generate profit.
So you just add friction.
Yes. By introducing tiny moments of friction, by withholding that data in 100 small ways over a year, you make yourself slightly less profitable to monitor.
That makes sense.
But the second and far more important function is internal. These small refusals maintain your psychological autonomy. Every time you say, "I prefer not to," you are reminding yourself that you are not just a data-generating node. You are actively keeping yourself from fully internalizing the logic of the Panopticon.
You are refusing to let the machine write the entirety of your story. I love that. But if individual non-compliance like leaving your phone at home mostly protects your own mind, how do we protect each other? Because a bunch of isolated individuals saying, "I prefer not to," still doesn't constitute survival. The authors suggest the answer isn't in what we do alone, but how we gather. They introduce a concept called the laboratory of the street.
Right. So Foucault looked at the modern city grid, the straight avenues, the clear lines of sight, the organized public squares, and saw only an instrument of surveillance and control. Everything was regulated and visible.
But the text argues Foucault missed the poetry of human interaction.
He entirely missed it. The street is also the exact place where the system's experiments in total control consistently fail. And they illustrate this by describing Marcus and his friends playing pickup basketball at Lake Merritt every single Saturday.
Right, because from the perspective of the city's cameras and the predictive policing algorithms, those men are just engaging in a permitted use of public space.
Right.
The system sees heat signatures. It tracks facial recognition geometry. It logs the metadata of which individuals consistently associate with which other individuals.
The algorithm successfully captures every single piece of data about the gathering, and yet it is utterly blind to the actual meaning of the event.
Completely blind.
It cannot compute the intimacy of the jokes being told. It doesn't understand the cultural significance of the food being shared on the sidelines, or the deep generational solidarity being built as the older men teach the younger kids how to shoot. The system sees the geometry of bodies and space, but it entirely misses the community.
And the authors frame this as the fundamental difference between watching and witnessing. There is this deeply moving narrative in the text about Marcus's friend, Devin, who gets evicted from his apartment.
Yeah, that part is so powerful. The official archive of the surveillance state records Devin's eviction as a sterile, objective fact. It logs a failure to pay rent on time, a court order, and the recovery of property by the landlord.
Just data points.
Right. That process is watching. It is extractive, mechanical, and punitive. But the community creates what the authors call a counter-archive.
I love that phrase, counter-archive.
The counter-archive isn't stored on a server. It is the 12 people who show up with empty boxes and pickup trucks on a Tuesday morning to help Devin pack his entire life before the sheriffs arrive.
Yeah.
It's the family that clears out their living room to house him for 3 weeks. It's the neighborhood informally scraping together cash to help him make a deposit on a new place. That action is witnessing.
Witnessing acknowledges the immense complexity of human struggle and preserves the vital context that the official data deliberately erases.
Exactly.
The text also makes a profound observation about how the system handles our emotions. The authors point out that surveillance capitalism wants to medicalize our grief and monetize our joy.
Yes.
Like, if you're experiencing profound sadness or alienation, the system offers an app subscription for mindfulness or targets you with pharmaceutical ads. And if you're experiencing joy, the system insists you must purchase a product to properly celebrate it.
It always comes back to a transaction.
Always. But practicing genuine, shared joy with your community, like laughing together at a park, playing music on a porch, is completely free. Therefore, it's a radical act of resistance because the system simply cannot extract surplus value from it.
It's unmonetizable.
Right. Trying to understand a community gathering by looking at algorithmic metadata is like trying to understand the emotional devastation of a beautifully written poem by using a calculator to count the syllables.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You capture the structure perfectly, but you entirely miss the soul.
You do. And the algorithm can count the syllables of our lives, but it is deaf to the poetry. Preserving that human soul requires us to identify and actively defend physical spaces where that poetry can still happen. The text places a massive emphasis on the concept of physical sanctuaries.
Like the public library. They use that as the prime example.
Yes, the public library is highlighted as an increasingly rare anomaly in the modern landscape. Almost every other physical space in a city is now designed to track your movements or compel a transaction. You're either a consumer, a worker, or a trespasser.
Basically, yeah.
But the library is fundamentally designed for access rather than extraction. It's a space where a person can exist for hours, entirely unbothered, without any underlying pressure to generate financial value for surveillance capitalism. It's a literal physical crack in the concrete.
But protecting our humanity isn't just about finding physical sanctuaries in the present, right? It's also about managing our legacy for the future. The text dives into the really unsettling reality of the digital afterlife, contrasting the fates of Tupac and Marcus.
Right.
Decades after his death, Tupac's image was resurrected as a corporatized hologram to perform at a music festival. His digital footprint, his voice, his likeness, they continue to generate massive profit for corporations long after he has passed. He basically became perpetual data.
And to combat this corporatization of death, the authors urge readers to plan their digital deaths as deliberately as they navigate their physical lives.
Right, Marcus has a whole plan for this.
He does. He designates a trusted friend as his digital executor. He ensures this person has a secure list of his passwords and strict instructions to systematically close and scrub his accounts upon his death. The whole goal is to ensure that his digital footprint concludes on his own terms, preventing his data self from wandering the internet as a monetized ghost.
It's a practice of remembering forward. And Marcus doesn't just apply this to his death, he actively applies it to the next generation. The text details how Marcus interacts with his 15-year-old nephew, passing down what the authors term street pedagogy.
Yeah, because official institutions, like the high school his nephew attends, which has its own network of surveillance cameras and device monitoring software, they're never going to teach a student how to resist their own surveillance.
No, of course not.
So Marcus takes on that role. When they're walking to the store or chatting about video games, Marcus casually weaves in lessons. He teaches his nephew how to spot the cameras, how to understand the economic forces driving gentrification in their specific zip code, and how to navigate police encounters without escalating the situation.
He is actively ensuring that the next generation does not simply normalize the digital panopticon they happen to be born into.
Exactly.
And this active teaching ties directly into the author's concept of hope. And I really appreciate that they don't frame hope as this soft, naive sentiment or, some passive optimism where you just cross your fingers and assume the arc of the moral universe will bend toward justice on its own.
No, not at all. The authors define hope as an active, deliberate technology for survival. They connect this back to Hannah Arendt's concept of natality.
Okay, natality.
It's the uniquely human capacity to begin something new, to act in ways that are entirely unpredictable to the system. Building a community garden in a vacant dirt lot, even when you know the city council might zone it for luxury condos in 2 years, is not an act of foolish optimism.
It's a practice.
It is the necessary daily practice of the technology of hope. You're creating a new reality, however temporary. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, hope in this context is the ultimate refusal to accept the Panopticon's victory as total or permanent. The surveillance state relies on exhaustion. It wants you to feel that resistance is futile because hopeless people are compliant people.
Right.
Hope is an infrastructure you must build and maintain day by day to insist that alternative ways of living are still possible.
And that brings us to the final, really sweeping principle from the text, which the authors call the Exodus Clause.
Yes. The Exodus Clause takes its name from a tattoo Tupac had on his back, Exodus 18.11. In the text's framework, this clause represents the foundational faith that no empire, no matter how technologically advanced, vast, or seemingly omnipotent, is ultimate.
Wow.
Every empire falls or transforms. Egypt fell. Rome fell. The authors argue that the digital surveillance state, as totalizing and inescapable as it feels to us right now, is just another empire. It will not last forever.
So the goal of this survival guide isn't to overthrow the server farms single-handedly by tomorrow morning.
No.
The goal is to maintain the cracks in the concrete, to preserve human consciousness, and to keep walking toward liberation so that the generations that follow have a path to follow.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The synthesis of this deep dive is that you do not have to be crushed by the concrete. You can find the cracks. You can practice those small refusals, channel your inner Bartleby and say, I prefer not to, when a store asks for your data.
Absolutely.
You can choose to be a true witness to your community rather than just a passive watcher. You can fiercely, unapologetically protect your unmonetizable joy.
It fundamentally comes down to maintaining that irreducible core of your humanity. It is the daily practice of refusing to let your quantified data self entirely eclipse the reality of your actual lived self.
So to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over today, we started this whole conversation by talking about that phone sitting right next to you and the bodega camera watching your every move. The authors have vividly shown us how relentlessly the system captures our digital data. But what if your most radical act of rebellion isn't found on a screen at all? What if it's deciding which parts of your physical life you will absolutely never digitize? Take a moment and ask yourself, what is the one sacred offline space or the one deeply personal relationship in your life right now that the algorithm doesn't even know exists?